All right, we are in the second video for this supplemental review. We're going to look at question 5, and we'll see if we can do 5 and 6 at the same time. So hopefully you've watched the first video. Question 5, we're asked to find the area and the perimeter of the triangle. So keep in mind that the area of a triangle is just its base times its height divided by 2. And then the perimeter is just where we add the 3 sides together. So side 1 plus side 2 plus side 3. And perimeter for any shape is the sum of its sides. So coming back to, let's find the area first. Base and height have to be perpendicular. So if I look at this triangle, if I count over, I could count, or I could just use my ordered pairs there. My base for this triangle is 8 units long. And that's also going to be one of my sides. My height of my triangle, I have to drop the height or altitude and count how tall that is. Well, I'm going from 0 up to 10. So my height is 10. So the area for this one's pretty easy. I'm just going to do base times height divided by 2. So I could get 80 over 2 is 40, or I could simplify by dividing by 2 first. But regardless, we should get 40. So the area is 40 units squared. All right, now for the perimeter, this one's a little tougher. We know we have to use the Pythagorean theorem for anything that's not a horizontal or a vertical. So we already said that this side, and I'm just going to let this be side 1. We already said that this side is 8 units. So if I want to find one of my other sides, I'll just call this one side 2. I now have to make a right triangle, and I'm going to use the Pythagorean theorem. So I'm going to use C for my hypotenuse. If this side is A, it's 4 units, and this side, which is going to be my B, is 10 units. So if I plug this into the Pythagorean theorem, probably the most important thing we've done all semester, if you can't tell by now, I plug this in. 4 squared is 16, 10 squared, 100 is C squared, and then 116, when I add this together, is my C squared. I'm probably going to want a calculator on these questions. So to take the square root of 116, let's see, I know you can't see off screen. I'm plugging it in my calculator, taking the square root. So we get that C is approximately 10.770. So that's going to be like our side 2. About 10.770. And then if I come over to side 3, when I go to make my right triangle, it turns out that I have a 4 and a 10 again. So I don't need to do that again. It just turns out that this is an isosceles triangle. So my side 3 is also 10.770. So when I go to my perimeter, the most precise way to do this is to type in your calculator 8 plus the square root of 116 plus the square root of 116. And if you don't have a calculator on the day of the final and you need to do something like this, this is what you would write for your perimeter. But since we do have a calculator, we could actually add those up and we should get 29.541 approximately. And then that's just like in units. And as I'm going back, I'm reading the directions say round to the nearest hundredth. So I'll just go to 5.4. That's just in regular units. All right, so that's question 5, and it turns out it's not as bad as we thought. Just don't forget, when you've got perimeter, you've got to use the Pythagorean theorem there. All right, let's see if we can talk about number 6, and then we might do a separate video for some of these last ones. In number 6, this is actually kind of going back to that topic from unit 1.3 again. Man, I'm noticing a lot of these questions on the supplemental review are similar to MyoMarker's questions. So it says to find the values of x and y in number 6. And I'll tell you right now, what we do not want is we don't want an equation where we have an x value equal to a y, like an x and a y in one equation. So like even though that's correct, we don't want that. Instead, I need to find a way that I can relate a y and a y. So this is a linear pair. So I know 4y plus 3y plus 61 must equal 180. And if you're wondering how I started with the y's, it's because I don't have anything else with an x. So I'll combine my like terms, and then I'll subtract. I don't know if you can hear that. My computer is making weird noises. I'll subtract 61 from both sides. So I'm going to borrow from my 8, make that a 10, that's a 9, that's a 1, that's a 1. And then I get 119 is equal to 7y. I'm going to go to my calculator, 119 divided by 7. I get that y equals 17. Okay, so now we could come back and plug this into this equation. I could really just think to myself, if 3y is 61, the reason I'm using this one is I'm noticing that these are vertical angles here. So I'm going to come back to my equation for this, and I'm going to say, all right, 3y plus 61, if I substitute in a 17 there, I can do that multiplication. So 17 times 3 is 51 plus 61. If I add that up, I should get 112. So that tells me that this is 112 degrees. And because these are vertical angles, this must also be 112 degrees. So lastly, to find what x is, I have 7x plus 7. I set that equal to 112. I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides. 7x equals, let's see, 112 minus 7 is 105. And when I divide that by 7, oops, I hit the wrong thing in my calculator. Divide that by 7, I get 15. So x is 15. All right. The last video, hopefully the last video, will have these other couple questions on it.